Okay, so we have 5 alleles, A, B, C, D, and E. And according to Mendel's independent assortment, the inheritance of all of these alleles are independent of each other. So one of them is not going to affect the other one. So let's think about them separately. Let's first look at allele A. Now, from our parent cross, we can see that A is going to be heterozygous crossed with homozygous dominant. Then our probabilities would be 50% for homozygous dominant and 50% for heterozygous. And for our B allele, we have heterozygous crossed with homozygous recessive. And here we would have 50% heterozygous, 50% homozygous recessive. Okay. Then third, if we look at allele C, we have heterozygous crossed with homozygous dominant, and we have for their offsprings 50% homozygous dominant and 50% heterozygous. Okay. Then if we look at allele D, we have heterozygous crossed with heterozygous. So we have 0.25% of homozygous dominant, 0.5% of heterozygous, and 0.25% of homozygous recessive. And last but not least, if we look at the E allele, it's also 2 heterozygous crossed. So it would be the same as D. We would have 1/4 for both homozygous dominant and homozygous recessive, and 1/2 for heterozygous. So those are our probabilities for each set of inheritance. So if we look at the first one, let's look at each of these pairs separately. So for the A allele, the probability of getting a heterozygous is 1/2, right? And then because all of these events are independent of each other, in that case we multiply the probabilities. So for allele B, the probability of heterozygous is 1/2, and for allele C, heterozygous is also 1/2. For allele D, heterozygous is 1/2, and for E, heterozygous is also 1/2. So all of these multiplied together would be 1/32. Now let's take a look at the fourth one. So here we also look at the different alleles separately, or different genes separately. And for A allele heterozygous, it's 1/2 probability. B allele heterozygous is also 1/2. C allele homozygous recessive. If we look at the C allele, our only offspring options are from these parents are homozygous dominant and heterozygous. So this probability would be 0. So regardless of what these are, because there's a 0 probability of the C allele or the C gene, regardless of what these are, it's going to be 0 probability to get this kind of offspring genotype.